So I'm starting to think of it more as nation states, and ETH is, and again, when I finalize this article, there's a lot of parallels between ETH and a regular economy, but economies don't grow as fast as ETH has, and it doesn't have such a big boom bust cycle. But I think the shopping mall works, but also think of it as a country, and people will start to understand it.
So
firstly, to people who are just in the crypto space, it doesn't matter. They're both going up, right? So that's the most important thing to note. So you can back any horse you want. What we're in the game for is the excess returns. Where can you generate the higher return? So when I look at Bitcoin, it's the scarcity and the purity of what they're doing. But now we're building ordinals and other things on top of the network and layer 2s and stuff. Okay, more use cases. Good for Metcalfe's law. Good for on-chain activity. ETH is much broader and much more dominant in that broader world. And so when I look at that and think of the ETH staking, the yields, what institutions like about this as well, what kind of people get involved, I mean, everything seems to be more ETH based. And again, that's not a diss on Bitcoin, this ridiculous tribalism online. And I just look at the long-term ETH Bitcoin cross on TradingView, and it looks like it's a giant kind of wedge pattern. And I look at that, and that's the kind of, with all price history on a log chart, and I'm like, I just reckon that these patterns usually break up as a continuation pattern, and that would say ETH massively outperforms. If we also know that ETH becomes scarcer every time it's used right now, then it's most likely to outperform. What was really interesting is we've just gone through a big bear market. Normally, everything gets nuked versus Bitcoin. ETH didn't. Traded sideways. Yeah. So that's not a big tell. So if it stays the same as Bitcoin in a down market, what's it going to do in a bull market? So that's my hunch, is that it outperforms. My hunch that in this cycle it'll do the flippening, and then it'll probably come back again, and everyone goes, "See, it was ridiculous. It was a bubble." It's just over time, it's a faster growing network. Simple as that.
And you and I have watched the bond market for 30 years plus now at this stage. There's the global bond rout happening. Bonds are in the toilet. Yields are on fire. It's caused part of a banking crisis. I think there's a lot more shoes to fall. And I'm going off with this tangent, but I'm coming back to ETH. Like Japan is a mess. EU is a mess. UK gilt market is a mess. US, I think the Fed are trying to torch the economy on purpose to get it ready for a change in regime. I don't know. It's just something, they're going way too far and they're way too late. But do you believe ETH could replace the bond market, considering it has yield, etc., and it's probably a lot safer, and it's an asset that's going up? Well, imagine what happened then.
Yeah, the only issue is it's obviously very volatile. So there's that you need to trade off against it. But as a digital bond, pretty bloody good. If you're used to the volatility of the space, you can stake your ETH, get a yield. You can either do it through a financial counterparty, much like we can do by getting interest from a bank, which would be DeFi World or CeFi World, or you can stake yourself and take the yield yourself, which is like going to Treasury Direct in the United States and owning treasury bonds. So in the digital world, it is the treasury bond. Does it replace treasury bonds? Well, it depends on your time horizon for investing. If you are an endowment with a 100-year time horizon, what would you rather own? A US treasury bond that yields 5% or ETH that yields 5% and gives you the potential for the technology? Now, sure, you won't weight them the same, but it's got to be very, very interesting to have such a long duration asset with a 5% dividend yield or a 5% yield.
Yep, definitely. So let's switch gears to crypto. I use this analogy. It's very crude. Sometimes I try and explain, how to determine the value of a layer 1 or a layer 2. And I use this shopping mall analogy. Okay, so the blockchain is the shopping mall. The dApps are the stores within the mall. And the users drive the use of the dApps, which drive up the use of the currency, which drives up the price of the token. Is that too crude an analogy right now? Because when I analyze layer 1s, layer 2s, I look at the breadth of dApps. And I look at the adoption, the cross-pollination between assets. and, really making people comfortable in the ecosystem so they can go one place and kind of one store that has everything they need, whether it's NFTs and DeFi and maybe some social stuff, maybe some gaming, everything. So how do you view L1s, L2s, and does that shopping mall analogy resonate with you, or is it too chaotic?
I think it's pretty good. I think it's pretty good as an analogy. And if you could own a share of the shopping mall, now that's a shitty business model now because nobody wants shopping malls. But the visualization, how I'm thinking of it is, ETH is actually a digital nation state in its own right. And I'm going to write a big piece on this with the Kevin Kelly from Delphi Digital. Is my view is all the elements, structural elements of an economy are there. We've got a population. We've got a trend rate of growth. We've got a yield curve that's not defined by a central bank, but designed at protocol level. Then we have the assets that are in that economy. NFTs are assets within the economy. We've got the financial side of it. So that's CeFi and DeFi. And the layer twos are probably the states within that nation. So you get the choice, do you want to live in the United States and live in California, or do you want to live in Florida? And you accrue different benefits, but it's actually still under the nation state of the United States. So I'm starting to think of it more as nation states, and ETH is, and again, when I finalize this article, there's a lot of parallels between ETH and a regular economy, but economies don't grow as fast as ETH has, and it doesn't have such a big boom-bust cycle. But I think the shopping mall works, but also think of it as a country, and people will start to understand it.
So, and I know you're a big believer in Metcalfe's law, as I am too, and there are many other things that can drive the value of a network. But it's pretty clear there are kind of three names out there that are kind of managing all the users, and maybe a fourth. And those three names are Ethereum, Polygon Matic, Solana. And the fourth coming in from behind pretty fast is Arbitrum. But two of those four are layer twos. And this takes me back to the age-old question I've been trying to answer myself since I was looking for the ETH killer. That's how I fell upon Solana, as if there is one, that's it. But the challenge that I had early 2021 was it's modular. No, the ETH is modular and Solana is monolithic. So they're very, very different, the DNA, etc. How do you reckon that in your head across the different architectural types? Or does it really matter? It's all about the users.
I don't think it matters. I mean, I don't know what computer you're on. You don't know what computer I on. I don't know what version of the software you're running. Right? All of this stuff will get abstracted away. So really it's going to be, all these guys actually sell is block space. Is your block space attractive and are other people using it in ways that helps you out? Right? A lot of people use AWS because AWS have a bunch of services on top of it, of just storing your data. Same with Microsoft. So I think it's a similar thing. I think, once you just abstract all of it away and all of the emotion out of the crypto markets, is you need to make your block space attractive by having a good product that functions and is priced well. So I don't really care what types of chains. There's other interesting ones, Sui coming up, obviously, which is the similar beta based on Move, like Aptos is. There's a whole bunch of these. I don't think it matters. I think for me, I want everything to succeed in the best way that they can.
But there's no room. If you look at traditional business models, there's only one, maybe two winners in their base.
Well, I thought Tolly said something interesting. He was looking at, could Solana be a layer 2 on ETH? Or could even theoretically ETH be a layer 2 on Solana?
Or Solana be a layer 2 for Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what that got to me, he was having a more intellectual conversation about security and how to create extra layers of security in case of kind of block failure, stuff like that. But what that looked to me obvious was, well, then you've got interoperability. So then we don't kind of care what chain we're on and we can build anywhere. Because one of the difficult things for a business, if you're Nike, can you make the decision not to build on ETH? because you don't know if anything else is going to survive, or there's enough activity on enough wallets, that kind of stuff. So that is a bit of a supermassive black hole for ETH. But if you create the interoperability, then anybody can use anything. They can make the choice, hey, this one's faster and cheaper for me, it's better for my needs because I'm doing ticketing, whatever. And they don't have to make the catastrophic decision of, oh my God, well, nobody can use this for anything else.
Yeah. So I go back to the path to 1 billion users. The question is, who gets there first? And like everything else in the world, it's the best, cheapest, fastest solution will get there first. You can't have 1 billion users on a blockchain if it's $15 a transaction. That's just not going to fly. So
no, but Layer 2's accomplished that, right? So
they still have their issues with things like finality and stuff like that holds them back from certain use cases.
That's right. But for some use cases, more than adequate. For others, not adequate. And that's pretty much true of every blockchain, right? There's huge trade-offs. So I think that's fine.
And I know you spoke recently as well about some allocations. The way I look at kind of the crypto world and crypto positions is risk and reward. I know Ethereum will outperform Bitcoin. I know Solana probably will outperform Ethereum. But the question is, how much do you allocate? And this is the debate I have in my little head every single day, especially when I see things.
I've done this.
Pricing's at like one other number for you to consider is ETH market cap is 40x Solana. They got the same number of daily active users. There's something wrong with how these things are valued, or do people simply not have a clue as to how to appraise a blockchain?
So when I've done the work on this and built a Metcalfe's law model, it's number of active users, fine. But the thing that most people don't understand is what seems to give the best correlation is total value transacted in dollars. And what we find is that Bitcoin is worth more because more is exchanging value. ETH does a lot more transactions, but they're smaller. And the Bitcoin transactions tend to be larger in size because there's a lot more institutions and that kind of stuff in the space. So what it's telling you, and I found that all of them seem to be priced accurately according to that, with a chart fit kind of thing. Therefore, it's telling you Solana has smaller transactions. Okay, that's fine. It depends what applications get built. And if it's going to be a consumer chain, which is, I think, really where its branding lies really well, then maybe it does that. But then it's going to have a lot more active users because it's a consumer-based product. So you win in there's two different ways to win in that game. But I, like you, think ETH outperforms Bitcoin and Solana outperforms ETH. But I wasn't prepared to have that. I've got the ETH bet. I don't really have much Bitcoin anymore, and that worked well in the bear market. My ETH, maintained its value against Bitcoin, so fine. That's the first leg of that to prove out. The next bit is the bull market. I imagine that if those downward sloping trend lines of Sol versus ETH start breaking, and we start to see some breakout new applications on Solana, that I will be shuffling my 90-10 or 80-20 or whatever my current weighting is between the two and changing around. Now, I did that once before, which was Bitcoin and ETH. I had virtually no ETH. I was watching the chart pattern, and then I think it was December 2020, I just started switching. And then by the time I got through to like March of 2021, I owned very little Bitcoin. I'd switched 90-10 to 10-90. And it may happen again with Solana. I mean, people mistake me for an ETH maxi. No, I'm trying to be a profit maxi. Yes, I love the space, but I'm trying to make money out of a long-term view.